Man, so good to see you. I think that there is an extra special place in heaven for people who show up at church on Spring Forward. I really do. Yeah. Your mansion just got an upgrade. It happened. Chef Kitchen coming your way. Come on, someone. My name's Brian. So glad to have you guys here today. But for real, this is a hard Sunday to show up to church. So if you made it today, huge kudos. We were sharing with the team before that showed up to serve. How about showing up early on daylight savings? Then on top of that, it's been spring weather for like 3 months. Sunday morning, daylight saving, blizzard. What is going on? The flags were having a hard, they were on a struggle bus out there today. They really looked like they were going to blow over. So thank you for making your way, blowing in down the sidewalk, making it here this morning and joining us. We're so thankful and so happy to have you here with us today. Is this ringing a little bit, or is it just me? It just sounds weird to me? Okay, just sounds weird to me. Okay, just making sure. Didn't want to lose you guys. But yeah, we're going to jump in here. We are in a series that Pastor Zach kicked off for us called Divinely Human. Divinely Human. We're talking about the shortcomings of the people of the Bible, because they're all human, just like us. They make mistakes, they mess up, they fail, but God uses them in spite of their shortcomings, in spite of their failures. Pastor Zach unpacked a little bit of that for us last week with Peter, constantly messing up, always making mistakes. Jesus is probably always shaking his head at this guy, but still God used him in really mighty ways. In spite of that, divinely, that God, his Spirit, empowers us, uses us. Where we're weak, he is strong. And I'm learning myself, even at this age, been married, will be 20 years in July. Yes, I know, it's a big accomplishment, only by God's grace, right? And with our 4 daughters, we're still learning a lot. And I don't really, need Pastor Zach to point out my shortcomings and failures. I'm aware of those, and other people, really good at helping us figure those out. And one that I'm learning about the beginning of the year, I was like, New Year's resolution time, lose a couple pounds, right? It's always a good thing. Stay healthy, stay fit. I want to do that. But I found out, I found a new weakness that I have, and it's sourdough bread. It's right, my wife, Christy, has started baking, and I can't resist it. I mean, you have to be divinely human. I don't know what it is. You guys are like, what's the big deal? Loaf of bread? Well, the loaf of sourdough is the gateway. That's the gateway sourdough. It really is the gateway sourdough, because you're like, well, what's the big deal? You can't resist. You can't, not eat some sour bread. No, you don't understand. There's cinnamon rolls, sourdough. Bagels, sourdough. Donuts, English muffins. I could just go on and on. Pizza crust, Lord help me. Come on. It is so good. And not only I've got to partake of it, but so many people in the church, you've probably benefited from that. I know, Christy, there was one point, there was a deal where bread was passed out a window from the parking lot. I'm not going to say names, Steph. And so we've been taking it into the staff, and they've been eating on Sunday mornings. I'll come in, bringing in fresh bagels. They're like, they're still warm. Like, how can you pass that up? There is no amount of human strength. You can't. You bring in fresh, warm bagels and English muffins. Come on, nooks and crannies, somebody up in there. So good. So good. And matter of fact, last week, Pastor Ben brought in a huge bag of bread flour to give to us, to give to Christy, because he felt like I should probably replenish the supplies, right? And I was like, Pastor Ben, or as I call him, enabler, thank you so much for that flour. But it's been so good. It's been, I can't resist. It's delicious. It's good stuff. Many of you have had a chance to partake of that, and just so thankful. But I'm weak, but where I'm weak, he is strong. And I mean, Jesus himself said, I am the bread of life. So I'm just going to go with that. And I know, boo. Come on. I got to get a dad joke in there. But it's true. We're learning about weaknesses. We're seeing that in people in the Scripture, in the Bible, and we can kind of relate to their stories. So many times when we read these stories, we can see the humanity in them, and we can relate. We can see things in our own lives. We can see things that we've dealt with, struggles. And so today we're talking about Joseph. And I know there are several Josephs in the Bible, but specifically we're talking about Old Testament Joseph. Not to take any thunder from Jesus' dad, but we're talking about Old Testament Joseph. Joseph has a musical written after him, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. Come on, anyone ever seen that? I've seen it a few times. I could bust out into some show tunes, but we don't have time. It's Joseph of the Old Testament. His story is in Genesis 37 through 50. 37 through 50. And I would really encourage you today, we're going to do a real high flyover today, like the Cliff Notes of the Cliff Notes. So I just encourage you this week, just take some time. It's super easy reading, Genesis 37 through 50. Read this, and I truly believe there'll be something that comes alive to you that will speak to you in some way and will bless you as you see the story of Joseph and his humanity revealed and how God used him in big ways. So we're going to do a flyover real quick, and we're going to meet Joseph in Genesis 37, verse 1. And Joseph has a lot of brothers, and his dad's Jacob. So here we go. Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And he brought their father a bad report around about them. Right away, Joseph's a tattletale. So we see this coming right out the gate, and setting up for a good one. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons. That's Jacob, is also Israel. God's about to make a mighty nation out of Jacob. That's the promise, the covenant that God gave him. So he loved him more than any of those other sons because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any other of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Jacob's kind of savage. Everyone's always fighting over who's mom and dad's favorite, right? Oh, well, I just love all my children the same. I love them in different ways, right? Jacob, nope. Joseph's my favorite. I love him the most. Matter of fact, I love him so much more than the rest of you. We're going to make him really stick out. Here's this bright, blinding coat that will signify to everyone and all you brothers how much more I love him than the rest of you, right? Well, man, this is going well. Siblings, you know where this is going. So Joseph has a dream. He's a dreamer, this Joseph, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright while your sheaves were gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Now it continues from there. He has a second dream. He didn't learn that they already hate his guts. And he's like, "Oh, I have another dream." Not only that, the moon, the stars, all the sun, they all bow down to him. He's like, "Not only you brothers, mom and dad, they're going to worship me too. This is going to be great." Even his dad's like, "Joseph, you might want to pump the brakes on the dream thing. Maybe that's something for your prayer journal, inner dialogue. You might not want to share that with your brothers so much." But he does. He's just bold and shares, this is what the dreams I'm having. This is what they mean. So as you can imagine, if you know the story of Joseph, it doesn't go well. Genesis 37, verse 19, his brothers, "Here comes that dreamer," they said to each other. "Come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams." Murder. These guys hate him. You think you've got sibling rivalries or problems in your family? Are people plotting to kill you? They know how much his dad loves this guy, and they're just like, "We're going to get rid of him." But thankfully, Reuben, one of his brothers, hears this. He's like, whoa. He tries to rescue them from the hands. Let's not take his life. Don't shed any blood. Let's throw him into this cistern, this well, here in the wilderness. Don't lay a hand on him. Reuben said this because he planned on coming back and saving him. He's kind of the, you got that one brother. He's that one brother. He's got your back. Everyone's plotting to kill you. He's got you. So Joseph came to his brothers. They stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe that he was wearing, and they took him and they threw him in the cistern. The cistern was empty and there was no water in it. I love this. Brothers just plot murder. They throw him into the cistern, and they're like, "Hey, anyone hungry?" So they sit down for their meal. They look up, and they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming to Gilead. The camels were loaded with spice, balm, myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What will we gain if they'll kill our brother and cover up his blood?" This is the entrepreneur in the family. "Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he's our brother, our own flesh and blood." His brothers agreed. So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. Later it says that Reuben came back to the cistern to get his brother and rescue him and take him back to his dad, and he wasn't there, and he's so upset. They tell his father that he had been killed. As you imagine, he is just heartbroken, losing a child, let alone his favorite. And he's just distraught, and he's just so sad. And the brothers just, I don't know what they do with that silver. Maybe go get more food because it sounds like they're hungry. So that's what they do. And the amazing thing happens is that as he's sold into slavery, he ends up at a guy's house named Potiphar. Now, Potiphar was a servant of Pharaoh, high ranking. And so we'll jump in there and take a look at what happens to him after he's sold into slavery. Genesis 39. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, brought him from the Ishmaelites to take him there. And I love this. The Lord was with Joseph. He's a slave, remember, so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of the Egyptian master. When his master saw the Lord was with him, the Lord gave him success in everything he did. Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of the household and entrusted to his care everything he owned. From that time, he put him in charge of his household and all that he owned. The Lord blessed the household from the Egyptian because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything that Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care with Joseph in charge. And I love this. He did not concern himself with anything except the food that he ate. So here, Joseph has a dream. Brothers hates him. Sells him into slavery, ends up in this house where now he is favored by God. Why? It says there, right there beginning, God was with Joseph, even while he was in slavery. Potiphar's house prospers. Things seem like things might be on the up and up. Maybe this page can turn for Joseph somehow, but then things go south really quickly. We read here that Potiphar's wife kind of develops an eye for Joseph. Matter of fact, the Bible actually says that he is well-built and handsome. Now, if the word of God says that you are well-built and handsome, I imagine he was a good-looking guy. And so Potiphar sees this, and she's constantly trying to come get her and to entangle, come, sleep with me. Come. And he's like, no, I can't sin before my master, before God. He just flat out refuses. When finally she grabs onto his cloak, and he runs out of the house without his cloak, and then she just cries, wolf, look what he's done. He tried to defile me. And, Potiphar comes bad, blows up. He's so angry, and he throws him in jail. Joseph, now things went from bad to now worse. Now he was a slave, and now he is in Pharaoh's prison. No hope, no future, very likely to die here in this circumstance, in this situation. But then check out what happens in this chapter. But while Joseph was in the prison, once again, the Lord was with him. Catching a pattern here? He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in the prison. This Joseph, how's this happen? And he was made responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. And as you'll read, you'll see that Joseph meets a few other of his fellow prisoners while he's there. Matter of fact, some of Pharaoh's high-up-ranking officials were there. One was his cupbearer, and the other was his baker. And they start having these dreams. And they're like, we don't know what these dreams mean, but we're kind of having them all the time. We don't know what this means. And Joseph's like, hey, God will know what those dreams mean. Tell me the dreams, and I'll give you the interpretation for them. But, remember me if and when you get out of here. And they're like, okay, well, here's the dreams. Well, one for the cupbearer goes great. He's like, hey, you're going to be restored to power. Pharaoh's going to bring you back. Baker, not so much. He wasn't making enough sourdough. They're like, shh, you're done. You're going to die. And they're like, well, that one, man, that dream wasn't so great. I imagine they were probably duking it out a little bit on like, this guy's full of it. He doesn't interpret dream. And the cupbearer's like, come on, baby, come on, dream. And it's exactly what happened. The cupbearer's put back in power. The baker, he's gone. And of course, they remember their friend Joe. Nope. 2 years go by. 2 full years after he helps them out. No one says anything about this incredible Joseph guy running the prison, interpreting dreams, doing all this awesome stuff, until Pharaoh himself starts having these crazy dreams. No one can figure it out. No one knows what these dreams mean. Let's go ask these people, all these wise people. They should know. No one can figure it out. We don't know what these dreams. Pharaoh's literally tormented by these dreams. What is going on? And then all of a sudden, the cupbearer, bing, light bulb. Joseph! Oh, yeah, there's this guy, Joe. He's really great. He's kind of in the prison. He interprets dreams. The dream I told him exactly what happened. It happened. It was amazing. Let's get him. Pharaoh's so desperate. Goes to get this Hebrew slave, now prisoner. They clean him up. They bring him before Pharaoh. He shares his dreams to him, interprets them brilliantly. Not only interprets them, he's like, here's what you should do. Here's the wisdom behind that. Here's what's going to happen. There's going to be some really big, great yielding crops and good years of abundance, and it's going to be led by all of this famine that's going to come after. It's going to be terrible, but you should go ahead and start storing up and saving up now because it'll get you through all that terrible time. And Pharaoh's like, that is a brilliant idea. And I love this in Genesis 41. The plan seemed good to Pharaoh and all of his officials. So Pharaoh asked him, can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God? divinely human. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has made all of this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all the people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. He's put in charge of everything. He's second in command. Whatever he says goes in the land. Pharaoh is so impressed with him and so moved by the Spirit of God within him and the wisdom that he has that he says, you are it. You are the man. You will only be second to me. Whatever you say. Can you imagine the whirlwind? Your brother's hating you, plotting to murder you. You go into slavery. Then his wife lies on you. You do the right thing. You get thrown into prison for it. You get left there to rot, and the people you help don't do anything to help you out. And now here he finds himself large and in charge, in command. He's got the power. He's got the authority. He is the man. But the dream wasn't fulfilled yet. See, there was great famine in the land. The good times had come and gone, but Pharaoh had Joseph save up everything so they were able to get through it. And the famine was so bad that all the way out of Egypt, even in Canaan where his family still lived, his dad's still there, brother's still there, they have no food. Dad Jacob's like, go down to Egypt. I hear they have food here. Take all this silver, buy it. Well, they come in and something amazing happens, and I'm going to let you read this. It's so good. They don't recognize Joseph. They have no idea it's him. He's the man, comes in. Matter of fact, he messes with them. He gets an interpreter. He knows everything they're saying, and he's got an interpreter interpreting for him. And can you imagine what he had to have felt in that moment? Here's my brothers that tried to kill me, and now they're coming down asking me for food. And so he does this amazing thing. He doesn't tell them who he is. He sends them with all of this food, puts their silver back in. They don't know. They get home, and they're like, oh, this guy's going to be mad. How's all of our money here? It looks like we stole it. And so he actually grills them all during this time. He kind of messes with them, honestly. Who are you? You're spies to the land, come to Egypt. He's really trying to figure out their heart. He says, you guys can't go back until you bring your youngest brother, and I'm taking one of your brothers, and he's going in prison until you bring him back. And they're like, this can't happen, right? And so they go back and tell Dad, we can't go back, but then the family keeps getting worse. You got to go back. You got to go back. So they finally give in. One of the older brother vouches. He's like, I'll bring back your youngest son. Don't worry. It's going to be good. It's going to be fine. Joseph continues to mess with him. What's he do? He sends him out, and he takes his cup, and he hides it in the youngest one's bag. They don't know. They get down the road going home. They send the officials. They come find him. Who stole? Why would you steal from us? They have no idea what he's talking about. And they find the cup. They bring him back. They are shaking in their boots. They're like, this guy is about to level us. Meanwhile, they have no idea it's his brother. So finally, they come back in. Joseph can't take it anymore. He sends everyone away and has this powerful moment where he just breaks down. It says he weeps so loud that the people of Egypt could hear him, and they told Pharaoh about it because Joseph was just so broken down, finally to admit that he was their brother. Instantly, they are paralyzed in fear. They're like, oh, we're about to get it. These are the guys that plotted to kill you, sold you into slavery, who hated you, and the exact opposite thing happens. It says in Genesis 45, after he reveals himself to them, he says, Joseph said to his brothers, come close to me. And when they had done so, he said, I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been famine in the land. For the next 5 years there will be no plowing and reaping, but God sent me ahead of you, one perspective, to preserve for a remnant on earth, to save your lives by a great deliverance. And then hear this in verse 8. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me a father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and ruler of all Egypt. Now hurry back to my father and say to him, this is what your son Joseph says. God made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me. Don't delay. Pharaoh hears about this, welcomes his family, gives them great pieces of land. He actually, Jacob in his old advanced years gets to bless Pharaoh, gets to pray for him. They get to all these things, and all this amazing stuff happens. And it's really to build up the promise that God had given Jacob, the covenant that he had made with Israel, that I'm going to make a nation out of you. And so this is what's happening as this is being fulfilled in Joseph, that the dream that was in him. And as things wind down for Joseph and his family, Jacob passes away while he's in Egypt, and he makes Joseph promise him, please take me to the land of my fathers. Please take me to Canaan and bury me there. And so he does exactly what he says he will do. Pharaoh says, go bury your dad. We'll be back. And after he buries him, his brothers still don't get it. Soon as dad's dead, hey, dad told us to let you know that you should forgive us for trying to kill you and sell you into slavery. They're still flipping out all of these years later, knowing that Joseph is for them, but they can't get over that he would forgive them. Genesis 50. But Joseph said to them, don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done and saving many lives. So then don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children. And he assured and spoke kindly to them. This, my friends, is where the dream was fulfilled for Joseph. It would be easy to think that the dream that Joseph had was that he would come to power and there were many people bowing down to him, but Joseph knew otherwise. See, maybe it was the process that he went through and all the pain that he had to go through in the trial to get him where he ultimately landed to be an authority, but he knew that it wasn't about the star and the moon and the sun and the sheaves of wheat just bowing down to him. He knew that he was put into a position of authority to not only save his family's lives, but to save the lives of many. And not only that, to bring the fulfillment that God had given his father, Jacob, and Israel to become a mighty nation. Isn't it amazing as we see and talk about divinely human Joseph's character? How easy it would have been to be completely consumed by vengeance and anger, just absolute hurt, to be betrayed by your family in such an incredible and powerful way. And not only that, that the betrayal happens and things just go from bad to worse. And here he finds himself in slavery. Then he finds himself in prison, all for while trying doing the right thing. Instead, he sees the fulfillment of the dream that God placed in his heart to save others. And I truly believe that Joseph could only do this because of being divinely human. That it wasn't in his own strength, that even Pharaoh, king of all of Egypt, the man with all the power, would meet him briefly and recognize the Spirit of God in him. Who can we find in all of the land with a man, the Spirit of God like this? He recognized it. And I think there's so many things that we can take and we can see from this story of being divinely human. Because being divinely human and just being human ourselves isn't just about the shortcomings and failures we have, but it's sometimes and many times about the things that happen around us. The shortcomings of others and the way people treat us and the things that happen to us. And how many know there are people out there who are ill-intended towards us, maybe like Joseph's brother who are out to get us. But even the people who have the best intentions, we're human too, and we're going to hurt each other, right? And so we have this opportunity then with the Spirit of God inside of us to say, we don't have to be owned by the things and experiences and the things that people do to us. See, Joseph could have got free from that prison physically and could have stayed there spiritually and mentally and emotionally. But instead, he recognizes, he gets it. It's not just about me. It's what God had called him to do. It was the dream that he placed into his heart. And it's so amazing to see and be inspired by the life of Joseph. Because I don't know about you, but I've had some stuff that's been kind of messed up. Some things that didn't go my way. I found myself in some situations of how did we get here? This is not where I want to be. Do you think at any time in Joseph's journey, he was like, sweet, I'm a slave now. I'm on my way. Dreams coming. Oh, yeah, prison. Here we go, baby. Bring on the stars and the moons. They're going to be bound down. That had been complete opposite of everything in his mind, everything around him, the way people treated him, even the people he helped, and they forgot about him. Everything said otherwise. But still, the Spirit of God within him allowed him to overcome those obstacles, those situations, those circumstances. As I was working through this and praying about this and just really reflecting on the life of Joseph, I was thinking about the people in my life who have been some incredible examples and have really pointed me towards Jesus with their lives and their actions, who have been dealt a pretty hard hand. And somebody who I've really admired is a friend of mine, is Pastor Kevin Ramsby, and he pastors in inner city Detroit. And I was actually really good friends with a youth pastor at the church that he was lead pastoring many years ago. And in 2009, I received a text message from his youth pastor. He said, hey, we need prayer. Pastor Kevin was in a home invasion last night. It went really bad. We don't think he's going to make it. It's not looking good. We just need a miracle. I think do we have a picture of Pastor Kevin to put up there? I don't know if it came through on the PowerPoint or not. Yes? No? Okay, well, I don't know if there is, but so anyway, in 2009, he had a home invasion. His family, his wife and 2 young children, son and a daughter, had just left that day to go on vacation. He had to stay behind to finish some stuff up and planned on leaving the next day. Here's Pastor Kevin in 2009 with his family. A burglar thought the house was empty and was surprised to find that Kevin was still there. He got up, came down the stairs, and a fight ensued. It was pretty terrible. Kevin was stabbed 37 times. 37 times. Laid there on the floor after the intruder left, thought for sure his time was done, was praying that God would take care of his family. In that moment, heard God's voice very clearly. They still need you. Somehow, miraculously, they don't even know how, he made his way over to the neighbor's front porch. Neighbor, as you can imagine, was a little freaked out, called the police. They came. As you can see, Kevin's a white guy. When the authorities got there, he was so torn up and so bloody and just so mangled, they couldn't even tell what race he was. They had no idea. It was hopeless. Kevin survived miraculously. He got to meet those police officers who showed up. He said when he went to introduce himself, they said they looked like they saw a ghost. Because they're like, there's no way you should be alive. That was brutal. But the amazing thing that happened is what not only happened in his physical recovery, and that somehow they missed every major vital organ as he's being stabbed that many times, is that after it happened and while he was recovering, he began to become so filled with hatred and vengeance for this man that attacked him. He was completely consumed with finding this man and bringing him to justice. But then something amazing happened. God's Spirit began to do a work in his heart. And he began to forgive this man to the point where they found him, and they finally did put him in jail, that he forgave him. And not only that, he took the step to actually meet him and forgive him in person. I don't know about you, but it takes someone divinely human to find someone who brought your life to within a thread of dying and then sit and come before this person and say that I forgive you. Now, here's where the story gets really amazing. See, Pastor Kevin lost so much in that season. He lost his house, he lost his health, incredible, difficult road of recovery. But now he has a ministry called Fight to Forgive. And we have a picture of Pastor Kevin and with his son, who is now an adult. They travel all over the country to prisons, and they go to death row. And they share, it's making me emotional, they share God's goodness. And they share their story, and the son gets to share his story of seeing his dad go through this, and how they were able to forgive this man, how God is a God who is a forgiving and loving and accepting God. And so they go all over. Fight to forgive. And it just really made me think of that quote. Maybe you've heard it: to err is human, to forgive is divine. Oh, come on. How do you get to a point where you go through something so difficult, and not only do you find forgiveness for the person who did this to you, but now you find a way to take this to probably one of the most unreached people groups in our society, to share the forgiveness of God. See, I think this is the same thing that Joseph had, that the Spirit of God dwelling within him, he could have stayed there. And no one would have probably blamed Pastor Kevin for staying angry and staying mad at this guy. But we would have been like, he is completely in the right and justified if he never wanted to see this guy's face again. But he did the unthinkable. He chose to forgive him. And not only that, taking it a step further to say, not only is this not going to end me, and this is not going to stop me, but Pastor Kevin obviously has a dream deep within his heart to reach people who are far from God, and that was evident from his pastoring. But now it's gone to a place where now he is able to seek out, and they see so many lives transformed. If you could just go to the website and see the letters of the people who send into them after he shares their story and testimony, the people there who are in prison or in death row who are giving their life to Jesus. It's so amazing. It's so powerful to see this happen. I think Pastor Kevin would be the first to say that he didn't do this in his own strength. It wasn't his own character. It wasn't that he was loving and forgiving enough. It was simply and purely the Spirit of God within him that enabled him and empowered him to do something unthinkable, to forgive, and then to make a go at sharing the gospel and the good news with men and women in prisons all over the country. It's pretty awesome. I hope you guys get to meet Pastor Kevin and hear his stories someday. We used to take our youth group on missions trips there to inner city Detroit, which was fun because I was pastoring in the cornfields of Indiana, and so it was only a couple hours away to go to inner city Detroit, and it felt like we had literally boarded a spaceship and gone to another planet. It was wild to see the looks on these faces of students who just experienced rural life, and then to go to inner city Detroit. I'm talking when we would stay at the church at the night, when we would stay there for our week-long missions trips, they would roll down the metal gates at night, here's the security protocol you got to do, lock everyone in. I mean, this was real. This was not a safe place, and to see the ministry that we were doing. And when we were there, Pastor Kevin would share this story with the students, and I mean, it's just captivating to hear the story and hear what God did. And I don't do the story justice, but it's pretty amazing to see that. And we've all been there, right? We may not have been like Joseph, where our family tried to kill us. Maybe you have, and that's pretty serious. Or maybe it hasn't been as extreme as Pastor Kevin, where someone stabbed you 37 times in your home and you thought for sure that you were going to die. But I think we've all had hurts. We've all been wronged by someone. We've all been betrayed in some way. We've all had people who we've looked it up and trusted to be there for us, and they weren't. Or maybe like Joseph or like Kevin, we find ourselves in a situation and find, how did we get here? This is not the dream. This is not where I wanted to be. This is not where I thought things were going. This is not what I wanted for my life. This is not what I thought God wanted, but here I am. I've experienced this in my own life. See, I grew up in a home with parents who were pastors, but I didn't want to be a Christian, let alone be in ministry. And I had this moment in my teenage years where I encountered Jesus for myself. It wasn't because my parents were pastors, let alone a Christian. I wanted a relationship with God. I felt his tug. The Holy Spirit came and convicted me. I felt that draw. He drew me to himself. And not only that, I found out really quickly that I wanted to be in ministry, which I'm like, this is divinely human, because I used to cuss people out. I'd be teachers at school. Oh, you're going to be a pastor like your dad. And I'm like, bleep, 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 bleep. You think that's going to be a pastor? No way. I don't want anything to do with any of that craziness. But because of God's Spirit in me and drawing me in me, I think, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pursue this. I'm going to chase after this. And God began to put that dream in my heart. And then very quickly after college, I got into ministry and doing ministry full time, and had a pretty terrible experience where the people who I looked up to and entrusted and the people who I thought had my back didn't. And it was really painful and really hard. And I found myself all over again questioning everything. God, if this is how Christians are, I don't know if I want ministry. I don't even know if I can do this following you thing. Is this how everyone acts? This is crazy. Why are they people acting like this? We're supposed to be leading people, and we're beating each other over with a baseball bat verbally. What is happening, God? This is crazy. And found myself in such a season of hurt, in such a season of confusion. I don't know what I'm going to do. And in that process of transition, just stop going to church. Can I just be real with you? Stop doing ministry. I'll just go get a job. I'll go do whatever. I can't do that. Those people are crazy. And found myself in a life transition, relocated to my wife's hometown. And there was a small church there that was just getting started called The Rock. And the pastor who was the planter there is named Pastor Jeff Horstman. Pastor Jeff is the best man ever. He's a retired Army chaplain, loves his Harley Davidson, and golfs like no other man you've seen golf before. There's a set of clubs in each vehicle. He'd probably strap one on the Harley if he could. Preached in a Hawaiian shirt every week. He's just an awesome, awesome guy. And I remember when we moved there, they were looking for a youth pastor, and they're like, oh, Brian, ministry, youth, maybe he can meet this guy. And so I'm like, no, I'm just not in it. But I'll go meet with him, talk to him. And I'll never forget sitting on the couch in his office, sharing the hurt that I had gone through and what I was carrying and what I was processing. And he just stops me and he looks me in the eye and he says, Brian, I am so sorry. I am so sorry that happened to you. I'm so sorry that you went through that. And friends, I wish I could tell you that he said something else that was more powerful, that changed the situation, but just simply having someone look at me and apologize, the relief that I felt, the pressure that left me, started me on a path of being able to forgive, truly forgive. Not just I'll forget about those people in that situation, but to truly walk into forgiveness. and then stepped into a season of ministry there that was more fruitful and more impactful to my life and so many people around us than I could have ever imagined. But just like Joseph, had I not gone through that heart and through that hard season, if I would have stayed there in that place of hurt and offense, I would have missed out on something amazing that God had for me and my family in that moment and in that season. And this is what our God does. To be divinely human is just to simply know that the trials are going to come, the tests going to come, we're going to have those hurts, we're going to have those failures, we're going to find ourselves in situations that don't make sense. But if we can understand that it's not about ourselves and we can take our eyes off of our hurt and put them on Jesus, we can know that we can overcome those. So what does this mean for us personally? You're like, oh, Brian, I hear you sharing things about pastors. Pastor Kevin, so great. He's going into prisons. You wanted to be a pastor and share ministry. That's awesome. Joseph saving all these lives, feeding them. Where does that leave me in this? Well, friends, I believe that as Christ followers, there are dreams that God has given each of us, and even beyond that if we're married, if we have a spouse, if we have children, that God has placed that as a dream in our hearts. And I'm so thankful that I had this example set for me from my parents. See, I said my dad was a pastor, but he didn't start out that way. See, my dad had a pretty rough journey in his story. His dad was only 16 when he had him. This is like babies having babies at this point. My daughter will be 16 in October, like wrap my head around her having a child next year. Wow. So he had a pretty rough upbringing because not only that, dad checked out. He was gone. Raised without a father, difficult, turbulent, very, they were poor. Let's just call it what it was. They were broke. Had a rough upbringing. But something amazing happened. That was the human side and the hurt that my dad experienced, but he met Jesus. You know where he met Jesus? In a living room. Someone's home. Pointed him towards Jesus, and then everything began to change for him because not only did he not live and wallow in all of that hurt and that pain, and I know it was a struggle. And that's the thing, too. We go through that hurt and we go through that pain, and it's not like because we're divinely human, we just get over it. Can I just be honest with you? I've spent years in counseling, working through and getting healing through the things and the hurts that I have felt, and that's completely healthy and normal. I want to encourage you in that, but we don't have to sit there and stay in it, and my dad didn't. Married my mother, childhood sweetheart. They were neighbors. Started having kids. That was their dream. 5 kids later, raising us to know Jesus. My father broke that cycle in his life and for us. He began to see that family tree change. And here's what's amazing. Here's what's most powerful to me. We get how like Joseph was seeing like the generational blessing, and now like Israel is going to become a nation because of what he had done. I feel that in my own family, that I have a wife, Christy, who loves Jesus, and that together we are raising our children to know Jesus. And I think that all goes back to a mom and a dad that I had who pushed their humanity and their brokenness and said, you know what, we're going to change some stuff in this family tree. And now I have children that I'm raising to the best of my ability to know Jesus. And the same thing is true for you. And maybe that's your story, and maybe your story is like my dad, that you're going to be the first one to stand up and say, you know what, we're going to change some things in this family tree. We're not going to follow through these human patterns and brokenness. We're going to rely and depend and look upon Jesus and change this thing moving forward. Because, friend, I don't know what it is in your life, but here's what I know that Joseph teaches us today as we land the plane. Joseph teaches us this: to be divinely human is to know God is working in and through us even when the circumstances and people around us indicate otherwise. Joseph teaches us to be divinely human is to know that God is working in us and he's working through us. That when the circumstances, what's going on around you, when everything says it's going the other way, and what the people, even the ones who are supposed to be for you, or even the ones who are out straight right to get you, no matter what is going on, they might indicate otherwise, God is still with us. I love that as the story is penned in Joseph, the 2 worst times when he is sold into slavery and when he finds himself in prison, it starts out right at the beginning, God was with Joseph. And I just want to let you know today that I don't know what you've been through. I don't know what the source of pain is. I don't know what abandonment or pain or pressure or circumstance you find yourself in, but the same thing is true for Joseph, it's true for me, and it's true for you, that God is with you. That when you say yes to a relationship with Jesus, his Spirit comes to dwell inside of you. And it's no longer about your own strength. It's not only about your own abilities. It's not about you looking before and be like, how do I figure out how to solve this? His Spirit dwells inside of you. Check out Joseph, that he is in slavery. Everything around him prospers. He's in prison. He is put in charge of the prison, that no matter what season you're in, if you haven't got to where God has got you going, that you can look around right now and you can be like, man, my job feels like slavery because I'm just doing it for a paycheck. Then do it to the glory of God and know that he is with you in this season. That if you're going through a situation, if you're going through something difficult, if you feel the hurt or pain from a friend or a family member, a situation, or someone who's supposed to have your back, know that he is with you. Can I just tell you and declare this to you today? The dream is not dead. Can you imagine Joseph feeling that? Come on. Be in slavery, murder plot by your brothers, in prison, forgotten, left there to rot. How could you think that the dream has a hope or a glimpse of coming alive? But friends, I don't know what it is for you today. I don't know what God-given dream God's placed in your heart for your family. Maybe it is for ministry. I don't know what it is. But I just want to encourage you today to be divinely human and know that it is not doing it our own strength, that the Spirit is dwelling inside of us. We can be divinely human. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you. I thank you for your love and your goodness. God, I just pray for every single person today who may be in a spot where they find themselves in a season and it's not at all where they thought they would be. Lord, as they looked out over the horizon, they thought they'd be in a very different place. God, I pray that you would be with them, that they would know that you are there, that they would feel your presence. God, that you would show yourself faithful as you always do. God, I thank you. God, and I pray for those who may be in a season of feeling hurt or betrayed, or maybe even something that happened years ago and it just never had been dealt with, Lord, that you are a God of healing. And God, you can heal us physically, but you can heal us emotionally and spiritually. So God, I pray that we wouldn't run from it, but we would run to you, Lord, and that we would know that you are with us, that you are for us. And God, to know that being divinely human is not about us doing it in our strength, but God, it's looking towards you, knowing that you can do in us and through us abundantly more than we could ever do. God, I thank you that you desire and that you came to give us life abundantly, life to the full. And God, that we would know that you still have that for us, no matter what the situation or circumstance may be. Lord, we thank you and we give you all the praise. It's in your mighty name, Jesus. Amen. Welcome, Nicole.